that we have as many resources available for you and your colleagues as we move forward, and just kind of let you know where we are in the process of implementation with this law. So we'll get started and we'll just go forward. Let's see. In an effort to be transparent. Here is our contact information. Myself, Era Jackson, and then Alicia Roberts-Frank we've been working together for about 1.5 years on this project, and we'll continue to be doing so as we move forward. First and foremost, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge whose land we are on. We are on the unceded land of the Duwamish and Puget Sound Salish tribes here in the Pacific Northwest, and we really just wanted to take a moment to recognize this land that we are on and that has been here for several thousand years before the creation of Washington. So first and foremost, as we go through this presentation, we are going to be reviewing the expectations of the early screening of dyslexia law, share the fiscal request that we have put forth as OSPI to the legislature, look at some of the website updates that we've had, and also review what the Dyslexia Advisory Council is working on right now, and then hopefully be able to answer some of your questions. We'll be monitoring the time as we go forward at that point. So first and foremost, the Dyslexia Law in a nutshell, because I know a lot of you have probably heard me say it before, is asked that starting in the 2021-22 school year, every student in grades kindergarten through 2nd grade will be screened for phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, letter sound knowledge, and also rapid automatized naming such as colors, numbers, familiar objects, and letters. Also, in addition to the starting of the screening, school districts are going to be asked to also provide multi-tiered systems of support for students who show weaknesses associated with dyslexia. And as you can see in the law, it shows that if a student does show an indicator or weakness of below grade level development, there are different steps that we're encouraging you to take with your school team through multi-tiered systems of support and moving forward. Understanding that this law does not supplant child find, and that's very much still in effect as we move forward. As we move forward, one of the other things that we should really be thinking about, that this is an opportunity for all of us to kind of calibrate around common language, common experiences, and be able to best support our students as they are moving forward. As I said in my presentation earlier here at waEDU, that this is not the whole picture of a child's literacy career. We know that they have 10 more years in front of us as time goes on, and we really just want to make sure that they have the strongest foundation possible to be able to tackle whatever text, discourse, writing that they come across, whether it's with us in their K-12 system, in their career, in their personal lives. So we really kind of look at this as just an opportunity to really make sure that we're creating a strong foundation for all 248,000 kindergarten through 2nd grade students that we have, and also really start having some common language and common experiences among our K-2 educational practitioners, whether it be classroom teachers to paraprofessionals to administrators to coaches to school psychs, really just making sure that we have that common experience together. So as we move forward, I want to take a little moment, because a lot of what comes up in our conversations is, how are we going to fund this? How are we going to make sure that we are not using all of our LAP general base allocation funding, and making sure that we do right by all of our students and not have to use one pot of money and utilize it for something else and another group loses out. So we wanted to be really transparent and share with you that the agency has put forward, I would say, is a fiscal request. We refer to it as a decision package. A decision package says to the government, and specifically Governor Inslee and the legislature, here's something that we really think needs to be funded. And we've been thoughtful about what does this mean and how we would like this to work. So I'm going to walk you through what this fiscal request is that the ELA office, along with our fiscal office, has requested. That does not mean it has been fulfilled. What means is that it's been requested. We've been having lots of great conversations with our colleagues at the Office of Financial Management. And then when the legislature starts in 2013, January 13th, 2020, not in 2013, we're not going back in time, we'll really be advocating for this. So first and foremost, let's talk about what this request is. As you see in this burgundy circle, first, we asked for an additional 0.2 FTE for all 9 of our ELA coordinators around the state. We work with our coordinators on a regular basis. We meet with them on a regular basis, and we really wanted to make sure that every school and district had a resource literally in their backyard. So we know that we can provide this support, and then they therefore can provide support to you in your region. Next, we asked for the idea that we know we need professional learning. We know that we need to all get calibrated around the idea of what is dyslexia and what are the foundational skills that are called out in the law, such as phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, letter sound knowledge. So what we've said, we started having conversations with a possible vendor and said, how can we create a PD? And so what we've asked is to create an online PD that will probably be about an hour for each, and saying how can we enhance understanding of what is dyslexia, and how can we make sure that all of us have a beginner's knowledge around the foundational skills called out in the law and the foundational skills called out in our Washington State Learning Standards. So we've asked for that funding too. As you can see, we average, we believe that there's about 12,000 educators in grades K through 2. We've asked for an additional amount of money for our paraprofessionals and for our administrators. There's nothing in the law that requires people to take this professional learning, but we really think it's a really good opportunity to develop some shared learning and to enhance all of our skills as practitioners. Next, we have also then asked for funding for our literacy screeners. And as you see, we're not asking for them in July 2021. We're asking for them in July of 2020. I'm sorry, we're not asking for the funding in July of 2020. We're asking for the funding in fiscal year 22, which actually starts July 1st, 2021. We know that it has been quite a hardship for quite a few districts to have to think about how their lab-based allocation funds are going to be used in multiple different ways. So we as an agency have asked the governor and the legislature to say, please, in this first round, as we start this implementation of the screener, can you please provide us with funding to be able to distribute to our districts to be able to purchase these resources? I don't at this moment have the details about how we will distribute that money. We're still figuring that out, but I thought it would be really important to know that we are asking for that money. And then finally, you can see what the total ask is. What we've asked is that for this first upcoming year of fiscal year 21, which starts July 2020, we're asking for about $806,000 to make sure that we get support to our ELA coordinators at the ESDs, and that we're able to get that online professional learning going. Then that money exponentially increases over the next couple of years to make sure that we're able to buy screeners or transfer money to each respective district to be able to purchase the screeners that they need to be able to assess the early screening of dyslexia. And so we thought it was really important in today's update to let you know that we've heard you, we understand the stress that you're under, and we have put a lot of time and effort into making sure that this fiscal request goes forward. Now the big piece comes is that we wait, we advocate. As soon as this request went live, I ended up having a late afternoon, early evening conversation with 2 legislatures about why this is really important. We've had a lot of good feedback so far from nonpartisan legislative staff, and we'll just keep doing those conversations and advocating for that. And if you have questions about this funding, please put it in the chat box, and we'll definitely get to that question, hopefully at the end of the presentation. So going forward, we have, as most of you know, in August, we launched the recommended literacy screening tools. These were tools that were selected by the Dyslexia Advisory Council. We recommended 5 literacy screening tools that attended to phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and letter sound knowledge. And unfortunately, at the time, none of the tool proposals met the definition of what we were looking for in a rapid automatized naming. And so we, on our own, recommended another publisher. So I'm going to hold on and pause for a second.
Still a lot of background noise, and so please make another call out to anyone who is able to mute themselves. Please do.
I just muted everybody again. Please make sure you're on mute, and I just muted everybody. Thank you. All right, thank you for that. So we recommended 5 literacy screeners that attended to phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and letter sound knowledge, and 1 separate tool that attended to the rapid automatized naming at this point. We also made sure that we had recommendations of what should be the grade band matrix of when and where you should do the screening. We also made recommendations of, we also provided you with a rubric of what was the rubric that the Dyslexia Advisory Council used to make a decision about what screeners they selected. And I guess I just want to make this caveat. I know a lot of people wanted to know what tools were chosen and selected and why other ones were not chosen and selected. And honestly, we made, because it went through an official bidding process with the state of Washington, we actually cannot disclose who were the people that submitted proposals and who were not chosen. That's just not something that we're able to do at this moment because of the privacy and the proprietary information in each person's proposal. But what we did want to do today is kind of take you through and look at some of the things that we have updated since that last webinar in August of 2019. So the first one is, we wanted to let you know that we have actually had a very healthy, exciting conversation at our Dyslexia Advisory Council meeting in October and revised the grade band matrices for kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. Most notably, you'll notice that we made the decision, and every council member voted on this, that the only screening tool we are recommending for kindergartners in the fall is their waKids, which has some beautiful alignments through Teaching Strategies Gold to the literacy skills that students are going to come in contact with as beginning kindergartners. In January, we recommend the phonemic awareness, letter sound knowledge, and phonological awareness. And this is the first time that we ask that our students be administered the rapid automatized naming. And again, remembering that rapid automatized naming means that you are assessing the familiarity and the recall of what students know around numbers, colors, objects found in a typical classroom, and colors. To be able to do that, letters, numbers, objects, colors. Sorry, I want to make sure I got that list right. To be able to do that. And then we say, if a student continues to show weakness around these skills, you should go ahead and progress monitor. Now, here's where the caveat is. It is pretty much universally understood, one cannot really remediate around rapid automatized naming. It is a memory working recall part of a child and a part of any person's neurological development. So when we hear that people are trying to remediate for rapid automatized naming, that's not the goal of this screener. The screener is to see how quickly do students recall? Can you, yes, do interventions to strengthen a child's memory? Yes. but you cannot try to remediate so that they have a higher score on the RAN. The RAN is one of those assessments that really is a good baseline of how well does a child do on this, and this is really good information for us as practitioners to see, wow, I saw that this child had was very successful on the RAN, or wow, I'm seeing this child has a weakness associated with their memory recall. That's what that information is for us to just have and keep at the forefront when we're looking at students and their child development. The other piece is, as we see in the grade band matrix, we can also see that we made the proposal that if a child is not eligible, has not been part of the school district, or has no part of their record that they took that participated in the rapid automatized naming in January of their kindergarten year, we are recommending that they be screened as soon as possible within 4 weeks or at the next assessment in their school or district. So we're really trying to find places in place where we can make sure that a student has participated in the RAN at least once in their kindergarten year. And that's why we also, I'm sorry, I muted myself, I apologize. That's why, oops, and now my Siri was turning on. So one of the other pieces that you'll see here is what we said is that if a student enrolls in the school after January, they should be administer the RAN within 4 weeks. You'll also see that we are not recommending that the RAN be administered in first and second grade again. We're saying once in kindergarten is when we would like to have it done. That's it. Now, if you don't have record of that, or if a child has switched districts, you might want to administer it again, but this is not a test that you're going to administer every 3 months to see if there's a shift in outcomes. The other piece that we are also giving new additional guidance on is the idea that our English language learners, we've had a lot of consultation with our bilingual department, our council members who are representatives of English language learners have really been very thoughtful about this. And what we are recommending in consultation with our bilingual department is that at this moment, unless you have the assessment in the child's first language, an administrator who speaks the child's primary language, and the child has had the opportunity to develop some literacy skills in their first language, at this moment today, on the 11th of December of 2019, we're saying please do not go forth and do an administration of the early screening around these skills. And that's not to say that we're not ever going to do this, but right now the information that we have is saying that there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to assessing our children who are English language learners. And knowing that if we assess a child who's acquiring English as their second or possibly third language, that all we're really going to walk away with, we're not going to be able to discern the difference between whether or not is this child really struggling with the English language and their literacy skills in English, or is this child struggling with just their English acquisition and proficiency. There are conversations that we're starting to actively have based on English proficiency levels. We might say this is when you should start administering an assessment, the early screening of dyslexia assessment with our students, but we're going to be working on that over the next year, and we'll have some more guidance as we go forward. Now, bearing in mind, full implementation of this law is not until school year 21-22, so this is just our initial guidance for early adopters at this time. And I actually spoke with our bilingual department last week about this guidance, and they said they still very much stand by it and think that this is the best guidance that we can give at the moment until we have some more information about our proficiency levels and how do we pair those two from proficiency to literacy development in English. So hopefully that gives you some information that you have been looking for at the moment. Then going forward, we wanted to talk a little bit about what is expected of the council as we move forward this year. And the council has 4 different requirements that are required, that we give recommendations to Superintendent Reichdahl on June 1st of 2019. And we have actually, before I get into those, I wanted to also just make a caveat that we have actually put a request into the legislature for a technical change. Currently, the law says that the Dyslexia Advisory Council makes a recommendation to the superintendent on June 1st, 2019. 2020, thank you, 2020, June 1st, 2020. And then OSPI on behalf of the Dyslexia Advisory Council will release it sometime by the summer of 2021. Well, we heard you, and we decided, we heard a lot of you saying, no, we need that information sooner rather than later. So we are going through and asking the legislature to make that change, that we release the information that I'm about to go over, that the Dyslexia Advisory Council works on, that once it is approved by the superintendent during the summer of 2020, we release it by January 1st of 2020. So that gives you all a full year of resources around these following topics that are required by statute. Screening implementation. How do you put in an implementation system for a system-wide screening? Multi-tiered systems of support and implementation. Educational information for families, and addressing the needs of students in grades 3 and above. So we are planning to have all of that information ready and for dissemination for you by September 1st of 2020, a full year before implementation, for us, for you to have those resources and think about how it works within your local system, but also for us to receive feedback on what should be refined, and try to answer more questions that you might have as we move closer and closer to the school year of full implementation. In addition, we also heard from numerous parties that they would like us to look at the framework and cycle for the review of additional literacy screening tools. And we are going to be releasing an RFQQ in late winter, January or February. I don't know the exact details because I still have to write it. We'll be updating the Washington Dyslexia Handbook to be making sure that that is a much more of a living document and reflects the current landscape of understanding dyslexia, supporting our students that might show indicators or have been identified with dyslexia, and all of those much more present resources that we know are coming in and around everywhere. Finally, we'll be having more exhaustive guidance for our English language learners as we move forward. So we're really excited about that next frontier. The other piece is that, and I'll just kind of put this on, is that our council members serve for 2 years, and a lot of our council members will be retiring their positions next year. So sometime in the spring, we will be launching an application call for advisory council members. Alicia and I went over lunch, is that part of the role of the council is to advise the superintendent on issues around dyslexia. And the piece is that all of the legal requirements will have been fulfilled by the time we onboard this new council. So really we'll be talking about what are the next steps that we can do to make this a very cohesive, thoughtful implementation for all of our districts around the state. So we'll really be looking to that and thinking about what that council, what roles will be available on that council. So please stay tuned, as we'll have more information for you around that, probably around, I want to say February or March, about what that application process will look like and what will be the next steps around there. Before we move on, we want to check. There's nobody waiting. Next, one of the other pieces that people asked for was a crosswalk. So we have developed this crosswalk. Several of our colleagues on the Dyslexia Advisory Council are working diligently to develop this crosswalk. It is not live yet. We will have it live right after, I want to say around June 15th. It will go live, but I wanted to give you just a snapshot of what it will look like. We'll be looking at kind of what is the modality, how long does it take to access, and all of those pieces. So the crosswalk that you asked for in August will hopefully be available with by January. If we are able to get it completed before then, I will absolutely post it on our website and absolutely send out an announcement through Gov Delivery and Twitter and Facebook that it is live and it is accessible for all of you to be able to use. So we heard you when you asked for it, and here it's coming along. I'm super excited about this. Our data person put this together, and we're just tickled pink with how it's coming along in that regard. Next, let's see. So one of the big questions that Alicia and I have really been getting quite frequently as we've been presenting around the state is, what can districts do right now to get ready for this? And here are kind of our bullet points, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit about what we have been envisioning and hoping for districts is, one, first and foremost, we create awareness and about the expectations of the law, learn more about dyslexia, strengthen or introduce multi-tiered systems of support around reading skills, develop knowledge around the foundational literacy skills that are called out in our standards, and then finally provide time and resources for our educators to learn more about dyslexia and the foundational skills. We do hope with the financial ask to the legislature, the opportunity to be able to support you, you in the classroom, you at the district level with some resources. And really kind of, they're not supposed to be comprehensive 32-hour workshops. They're really just to say, hey, let me give you beginner knowledge around these aspects and then point in the right direction for more resources. So you can really dig into whether it's the foundational skills that are called out in the law, or understanding what is dyslexia and what does the brain look like on a neurological level, about what does dyslexia do. The other piece that I would really say is that I would really talk about is the idea of what does it mean when your students are, when schools are doing the screening, and what does it mean that should be happening at that level. We can assess as much as we want, but at the end of the day, if we're not able to look at the data, look at the formative assessment intake that we're doing by being in the classroom with all of our students, the question will really be is, what do we do next? So providing time for educators and all of the school support team to look at the data, to look at where students are coming from, and to see where they're progressing for, and how do we refine and shift our instruction to make it be reflective of what our students need. And in that process of how do we talk with parents, how do we make sure that we have that home partnership, and how do we go through that cycle over and over again. So really, really encouraging people to really look at their school schedules, making sure that educators have time to discuss and think about next steps. And I think the other piece that really kind of resonated with me from an earlier presentation today is really thinking about, how do you as a school system function and make decisions about what are next steps for students? And we're really hoping with this law that people under this law, and also the funding of the inclusionary practices around the state, really get a lot of us to start walking more hand in hand and really making informed joint decisions about what should be happening with our students as they move forward. As I said in August, no educator should be making a decision on their own. This should be done together and with the whole school support team as we move forward. So that would just kind of be my advice on where you would go to next. The next step I would really think about is, what is going to be your plan for implementation? If you see me present in person, I pretty often share the slide of, I can check in with you in 2037 and you'll only have about a 3% change if you have no plan, where if I check in with you in 2023, you're going to have an 80% change because you've created a plan. So really, how will you implement these next steps? What will it look like as you all move forward and think about, how do we do this at a district level? How do we make sure our educators have the time and resources? And how have we affected culture to be able to have and be be able to have these discussions and make these decisions for our students at the forefront. So that's really what we would say is right now is the best place for districts to start at the moment. And I'm going to pause for about 5 minutes. We're at 6:30, sorry, I'm military. We're at 4:30. We're going to pause, look at the questions, and then come back and answer the questions as much as we can until about 5 o'clock. And then we'll try to answer the rest through our FAQ. All right, so we're going to pause, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
In other words, this is your opportunity.
Right, type things in, run to the bathroom, go get water, and we'll be back in exactly 5 minutes. Okay, thank you, everybody. We are back and we are going to start with some questions. The first one is, can we show that we already have good assessments, diagnostics in place without training on something new, expensive, and time-consuming, such as the RAN? No, you cannot when it comes to the RAN. The rapid automatized naming was specifically called out in the law, and it was one of the non-negotiables that OSPI, along with the different stakeholder groups, really agreed on was incredibly necessary to be part of the early screening battery. So therefore, we're saying that even if you really love the tools that you already have, you must add this one in to your battery of assessments. We are asking right now, if you look at the new grade level matrix online, that a student be screened in kindergarten. It's a fairly, was it Naomi Wolf who created the, Marion Wolf, I apologize, Marion Wolf who created the RAN, firmly believes that classroom teachers can administer it. It is a really good data point that we know for all of our students when that information has been looked at, really helps us tell a fuller, richer story about a child's learning skills.
Well, I'll read the question and we can respond to them.
Okay.
So we talked about the framework and cycle review. And then the next question is talking about the RAN again, that it has 4 subtests. How will this take 5 minutes per student? You and I had a bit of a discussion during on that one. Since you're typing, I'll go ahead and answer that. Each of the 4 subtests on the RAN should take less than a minute a piece. So really this shouldn't take no more than 5 minutes per student, or maybe 4 minutes, because each subtest is about 60 seconds for each.
And I'm also going to see a question, just so everybody's aware, we have a new MTS director here at OSPI, and Justin Pelos, and he is actually serving on the Dyslexia Advisory Council and is leading the work on MTSS. So we are completely in sync in making sure that we are constantly making sure that our messages are aligning. If we know we're going to be in the same region, we let each other know what the presentation was about so that we are making sure that our messaging is symbiotic or in sync or both.
So I'm not going to necessarily go in order on these. I'm going to ask you to return to the slide that preceded the fiscal request slide, or I think perhaps it was fiscal request slide. And that way we can have that up as we're asking some of the other questions. So while you're doing that, I'm going to go to one of the other questions. And that is that since part of the grade band assessment timeline guidance indicates what to do for students new to our school later in the year, what is being recommended to include in student records or files so that districts and schools know that they move to know that they were assessed or not?
That is a great question, and not one that we have answered. We have come up with an answer at this point. So that will be some guidance that OSPI will make to schools and districts, and hopefully we'll hear feedback from you all about whether or not it works, but we'll definitely think about what should be included in a student record as they move and as they move back and forth. So we'll get on that and try to attend to that on the FAQ in the coming months.
So the next question is whether or not there will be guidance for braided funding for districts. Because even though this is an MTSS initiative, SPED departments are frequently taking the lead on this initiative because families are routing questions to psychologists. I can start that a little bit, is that this, especially with our new department and our new push statewide on being an MTSS, SPED departments should not be taking the lead on this initiative. You want to respond to that a little more?
No, I would say that if we got this question earlier today, and it's definitely a question that we kind of need to wrestle with internally of who, it's kind of this weird question where I'm not really comfortable saying who should be taking the lead when we're pushing so hard for inclusionary practices. You know, our students, even if our student is on an IEP and is supposed to be receiving special education services, we're still asking that they be part of the general education classroom community. So I really need to go back and talk with Glenna Gallo, who is the cabinet lead for this program and for this initiative, and just kind of work out what we really would like to message out to the wider communities. At this moment, I'd say anybody who's taking the lead at this moment really needs to think about that this is a gen ed issue. Even if it is somebody in special ed who's taking the lead, this is a gen ed issue. It doesn't get to just go with the people that you think should have this screener. That is not the purpose of a universal screener. So regardless of who is leading it presently right now, 2 years before implementation, this is a gen ed issue, and every kindergarten, first and second grade teacher, student should be have access to these screening tools.
I think another part of why we've pushed it to be so strongly is because it should inform your instruction. It shouldn't be just a hoop that you're going through because the law is asking you to. And this ties into the next question that we have on there, which is that much of the community has the misunderstanding that in order to get supports for dyslexia, a student needs an IEP. Well, again, that's why we're pushing the MTSS, is that you don't have to wait to qualify for an IEP in order to get supports. You're struggling, you need to get those supports right away. And then the second part of this is that there's a misunderstanding about whether or not district psychs can diagnose dyslexia. This is a conversation we also had today at WERA, because one of our attendees was a school psych, and we had a bit of a discussion of what kind of guidance that we want to talk to Glenna about as addressed with the school psychs on our Dyslexia Advisory Council, because of looking at once it gets to that point, and this is again, Glenna's looking at the whole piece of what qualifies for specific learning disability. That's really part of a larger question and conversation.
And I think also remembering, just because a child has been identified with having dyslexia doesn't automatically equate to them being eligible for an IEP. And
this is a three-legged stool. And so this is what, your computer, because you've got the speaker. So that's to remind everyone that in order to get an IEP and qualify for special education, just having a disability doesn't qualify you. You also have to show that that disability is affecting your educational performance and that you need specially designed instruction. So just having dyslexia doesn't mean that you necessarily need an IEP or that that's going to be the best way to get your supports. So I agree that it is a misunderstanding. So thank you for whoever put that comment as acknowledging that misunderstanding. Your question was regarding communication plans. I think that's one of the things that Era and I are doing constantly, is trying to communicate and get things clear. One of the things that we did this week is submitted several proposals to talk to WASA, AWSP, to the small schools, to as many people as we can. This has been a really big year for getting out to different organizations. I was at WASDA a couple weeks ago. It was one ESD. We're trying to get out to all the ESDs and talk to every group we can so that we can try and have a consistent message all around.
I think the other piece is thinking about the idea that I wanted to also attend to the idea of that I debriefed with every publisher that was not selected for to be put on the list for the literacy screening tools, and recorded them all for posterity. And I can assure everybody that it was never communicated from the agency that we would not be going through another screening adding to the list. What I did say was that we would be having discussions with the Dyslexia Advisory Council at the end of October, and we'd have some new information for the public come December, January. Hence, here we are. That misinformation is unfortunately out there. We are absolutely going to be releasing a new RFQQ. That decision was not clear in September, but that was the decision of the Dyslexia Advisory Council to go ahead and make that decision. And there was no problem from our executive team or our cabinet to do that again. So that is what we have selected to do.
So just want to clarify that question response now here with the last item where I indicated that Acadia at the beginning was told that we weren't going to add any more screeners to the list. We are going through this, the RFQQ, as she had said. And we're not going to, we cannot confirm or deny on whether or not people have missed a submission deadline, whether or not they submitted at all. That would be violating confidentiality.
Let's see. Yes, we do know that the Dyslexia Advisory, the Dyslexia Handbook has really good information. We are not going to, Alicia is leading up that work, as I said to her, I said, this is a refining, not a rewriting. So we are going to keep the really good information in there. And I think it's a good point to make sure. Gen Ed teachers, no person in isolation should be identifying or diagnosing a child with dyslexia. As you've all as you've all heard me say before, is the fact is that if a child is struggling with their literacy development, support them and go and understand that this is a recursive process. If we have an ongoing process with a student who is not showing adequate progress, and adequate progress for every child is different, then it's when we start, and always we bring our group of support teams together and say, look, we're seeing this child not make progress. What should be our next steps as a school who is supporting this whole child and their family? So I would really kind of think about that. And I know that that's a culture shift. I know that that's a change for people to think about, how do we do this collaboratively instead of being left on our own? And that's a shift also for administrators and other people to understand, how do we provide time for our teachers to come together and discuss and look at what are next steps for individual students.
I want to respond to Jay's comment about dyslexia not being a DSM-5 diagnosis. I'm not sure it ever was, but I will say that it's always been an IDEA as an example of a specific learning disability. So when you're, and I do hear your concerns, but I feel like we are responding to requests. We are not the ones who put the language through in the bill, but we are responding to requests from stakeholders that are saying that we need to at least acknowledge that this is a recognized type of specific learning disability. Era, I don't know if you've noticed that there's a little bit of clarification asked for about braided funding guidelines, whether or not that's on our plate for the future.
It is now. I will say that that is a question that I will go back. We have a whole list of questions, so it's one more that I will put forth to my team. Glenna Gallo and Gail Pauley, the assistant sue for Title I for federal programs and other programs. I will definitely be talking with all of them about braided funding, and we will try to figure that out and give you some guidance around that. I think the other piece that I would say is, let me see, I'm sorry, I just missed this question, is that about screeners. The law is very clear that you can, districts can choose their own screener. They do not have to choose the screeners that are recommended by the Dyslexia Advisory Council. You can choose your screeners. So if you have a tool that you are confident in and believe that it attends to the phonemic awareness, the phonological awareness, and the letter sound knowledge, then, and if you're confident that that attends to that information and that you can have really rich conversations with your colleagues about how to inform instruction and communicate to family members and all of those pieces, then go forth and do it. I have a very small team. We do not want to be in the business of giving out tickets or policing people in that regard. So I really say to districts, if you're confident in the tool, I'm going to trust your knowledge and your decision making in that regard.
And if you're not sure on your confidence in the tool, we did include on the website the rubric that we used to evaluate the screeners that came onto the list.
So somebody asked us to come back to the first RCW 28-322-60. Really talks about the implementation. I think must use screening tools that exemplify best practices, use screening tool and resources identified by, may use screening tools and resources identified by the superintendent of public instruction. So really coming back to must use screening tools and resources that exemplify. That is the must under the RCW. And then also weaknesses associated with dyslexia, that intervention should start in the general ed classroom, section 3, Part C. Really, this is the idea of our students being in the general ed classroom with each other and having those rich experiences as a typical kindergarten, first and second grade student. If we are going to be working on how do we talk to parents about their students' progress, what is the decision tree of when and how we should alert parents to more kind of tiered experiences and concerns as we go forward. And we will be having that guidance out to you by September 2020. And that is the idea. We did not have it ready this year, one, because it wasn't the ask of the statute, and two, we were 2 years out from implementation. So I know for some of you who are wondering why we don't have those resources, remembering that we weren't able to have all the resources available for early adopters. And Alicia always says to me, do you want a fast decision or a good decision? And so we're trying to be very thoughtful in our decisions as we move forward. Any other?
I think we've covered the questions, but we're going to give you a few more minutes to think of anything else and ask in the chat box, and to make sure that the questions that are our answers to your questions have been thorough. And like I said, there is a good FAQ on the website. We're trying to make sure that everything you are asking is on there, and if it isn't, please let us know either via the webinar that we're doing in the chat box, or send us an email. We want to make sure that we're meeting your needs.
So with that, let's see, it is 4:53 right now. We'll hang on for the next 7 minutes. We'll put ourselves on silent so you can't hear us. Alicia brought some really good winter holiday candy for us to munch on as we were doing this webinar. So we'll put ourselves on mute, but we'll stay live until 5 o'clock if people have a question. And also know that if you don't want a question to go out to the whole group, you can choose private and have it go to me or to Alicia, and it will only be us that will see it at that time.
And before you mute, I also want to thank all of you for your commitment to our students, because that's evident in everything that you are doing. We can see that you're interested and that you want to keep knowledgeable. So while we appreciate and to say you're welcome to those of you who thanked us, we also thank you for all of your work.
Yes, thank you very much. I know it's like the Wednesday before, but we just wanted to make sure that you got that information out. We'll also be sending a newsletter update, kind of highlighting the new things to let people know. The grade band matrix is up there, has been refined. Also that the FAQ has been updated, and we'll try to plug in as many of these new questions that you asked us today into the FAQ in the next couple of weeks, so it's updated for the first of the year. So we'll hold on for another couple of minutes, and then we'll close out. Thank you everybody for joining us. We hope this time worked and was educational for you. And as always, we look forward to talking with you later.
And before we, for those people who are deciding to just leave and sign out rather than stay until 5 o'clock, we say happy holidays. Thanks, Jerry. We're seeing your notice as well. Jerry, we also noticed, somebody made a reference earlier to their website or their email earlier as well. And I just want to have a reminder to everyone that on the OSPI About Dyslexia page, there is a blue box in the upper right-hand corner where you can click and you can sign up for the updates.
This is Era again. I think I have attended to everybody's questions as much as possible through the private chat or in person. I think at this moment I was able to copy and paste the whole chat into a Word document. So we'll look at those questions and try and get some of those questions into the new FAQ for the beginning of the year. But we're at 4:59. So I'm going to call it at this point. Everybody have a wonderful new year, rest and relaxation over the winter break. And we will keep having these webinars and keeping you posted on what is upcoming next. Thank you again all so much for joining us this Wednesday afternoon. And thank you to King County Public Library for us. And all right, that's it. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend or a good rest of the week.
Happy holidays. Crazy weather.
Yes.
All right.